in my years in Washington, and I can tell you this, it doesn't get any better than the Congresswoman from Wisconsin. Please join me in welcoming Congresswoman Tammy Baldwin.
Thank you, Joe, for that gracious introduction. And thank you, Black Tie Dinner, for inviting me to Dallas. I needed to get away. It's been a tough week. A very painful week for so many Americans. As in every hard-fought campaign, there are winners and losers. But I want to reassure you that we will see brighter days. And thankfully, for the next 2 years at least, Ron Washington will be back. In politics, as well as baseball, it helps to know that there's always next season. And we've just come through a bruising election period. And I don't have to tell you that our country is deeply divided. We began the Obama administration with such great relief that we finally had a president who got it. 2 years later, there is frustration that we haven't come far enough, fast enough, and I share that frustration. Economically, our recovery has been slower than any of us would like. And socially, we have not yet passed legislation to enact equal rights for LGBT Americans and end policies that are deemed not just unfair, but unconstitutional, and I'd add, un-American. The road ahead will not be easy. The last time Republicans were in control of Congress, we fought hard for consideration of pro-equality measures, and we were rebuffed at every turn. Within the new Republican leadership and among the incoming class of members, I don't see many champions of gay rights. Now, it's my hope that the Republican majority won't revert to its prior agenda, which forced us to play defense, fighting back anti-equality measures. But I'm not holding my breath. While a repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which has already passed the House, is still possible in a lame duck session, I wish I could say the same for the Employment Non-Discrimination Act or my own legislation, the Domestic Partnership Benefits and Obligations Act. But unfortunately, the chances of enacting these measures are slim to none for now and for the foreseeable future. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to throw up our hands and give up. We will keep on moving forward because LGBT equality is a movement, not a moment in time. And as with every great movement of social change, it requires that we have faith. Faith that using the tools of our democracy, we can affect change, even when it's our own government that is denying us our rights. In the turmoil of the ups and downs of daily life, I find it helpful to take a longer view. Back when I was in college in the early 80s, I took a class called Infinitesimal Calculus. Just to prove my nerdiness, I was a double major in math and government. Now, in this class, our professor assigned us insoluble problems as homework. Now, we weren't expected to come up with the answers, but we were expected to show some progress. The point was that by pushing against the boundaries of what we knew, we could expand those boundaries. Now, I never figured out the answers to any of those problems. There's a reason I became a politician and not a mathematician. But as my career progressed, I thought back to that class many times. Because far too often, our greatest challenges are portrayed as insoluble problems. Our reaction is to throw up our hands and say, oh well, and go on to the next challenge. But history teaches us that even our biggest problems have solutions. How do you calculate the area of a circle? How do you govern without a king or a queen? How do you send a man to the moon and return him safely to Earth? All insoluble problems, or so they seemed at the time. The denial of equal rights to gay and lesbian people around like one of those insoluble problems. Now, I didn't come out even to myself until college. And when I did begin that process, I certainly didn't know much about the gay rights movement. There weren't many gay or lesbian role models at the time. I had to go find them. So I started reading all about the Stonewall riots, Elaine Noble, Harvey Milk, Phyllis Lyon and Del Martin, Frank Kennedy, and all the other courageous people who took such huge risks to gain a few more rights or change a few minds. I also discovered a frightening history of violence, discrimination, and injustice. In my senior yearbook, there's a photograph of the Smith College Lesbian Alliance that was intentionally blurred by the students so you couldn't make out their faces. Even at a progressive East Coast women's college, not so many years ago, these young women didn't want anyone to know who they were, but they wanted everyone to know that they existed. The fear of consequences. The fear of consequences in the classroom, at home, on the job, that fear influenced their decision to blur that photograph. This is the fear that so many LGBT individuals faced. And tragically, as we've seen in the most recent cases of teen bullying and suicide, this is a fear that many still face. I'm sure many of you understand exactly what I'm talking about. You've been there yourselves, but you are lucky to have learned that it does get better. When I graduated from college, I thought I would have to make a choice. A choice between pursuing the career of my dreams or being honest about who I am. Between public service or being myself in public. I decided to take a risk. So I did one of the most terrifying things I've ever done. I gave an interview to my local newspaper and I told them I was a lesbian. That spring, I was elected to the County Board of Supervisors anyways. In that same year, I attended an international conference of gay and lesbian office holders. There were 14 of us, and that was it. It wasn't clear to any of us that our numbers were going to grow. Today, that conference is in its 26th year. It has major corporate sponsors, and more than 800 openly gay officials are invited. Now, according to the Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund, 106 of the 164 openly gay candidates running in Tuesday's elections won their races. And those include the mayor-elect of Lexington, Kentucky, and a state representative-elect in North Carolina. 5 states and the District of Columbia now issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples. The Matthew Shepard Hate Crimes Act is now the law of the land. The LGBT Equality Caucus that I founded and co-chair in the Congress will be joined by our newest openly gay member of Congress, David Cicilline from Rhode Island. If you ask how we got there, there's no easy-to-follow chain of causes and effects. It took protests, marches, vigils, late-night conversations over the kitchen table. It took brave, young gay people coming out to their families. It took brave, young straight people standing up for their friends. And it took brave, older people changing their minds. It took religious arguments, political arguments, biological arguments, philosophical arguments. It took running for office, filing lawsuits, and lobbying government, and walking down the street holding hands. It took all this and much more. And what I want to stress to you is that there was no eureka moment. There was no elegant proof or simple formula. It took the constant application of pressure by people who usually couldn't even could tell that they were making a difference. This is what it means to work on an insoluble problem. We're not yet where we want to be in this country, but our founders understood that America is, and always should be, a work in progress, an ongoing quest to form a more perfect union. We live in turbulent times as we write the 21st century chapter of the great American story. Despite any setbacks, I do believe that full LGBT equality will be part of this chapter. In the face of these election results, there are those in the LGBT community and among our allies who feel we've reached a roadblock in our march towards equality. And I would tell you that the outcomes of elections present both challenges and opportunities. We will overcome the challenges and we will seize the opportunities, and we will do so by standing strong. We will not rest as long as we lack the right to marry, the right to serve openly in our armed forces, the right to adopt children, and the right to live freely without fear of harassment or hate. We will not rest. We will not rest as long as young people like Tyler Clementi, Seth Walsh, Raymond Chase, Billy Lucas, Asher Brown, and Cody Barker feel they have no future, no safe haven, and no hope. In their memory, we will not rest, but we'll redouble our efforts to keep moving forward. There are ways around roadblocks, and as we've done so many times in the past, we will find the solution to an insoluble problem.